Breaking news, another tense encounter in the South China Sea. This time, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel rams a Philippine supply boat near the contested Second Thomas Shoal, escalating an already volatile situation. Manila quickly accuses Beijing of reckless and dangerous maneuvers while the United States steps in, warning that any attack on Philippine forces could activate their mutual defense treaty. These alarming headlines have become almost routine, a reflection of the ongoing and dangerous standoff in the South China Sea, a region where tensions simmer just below the surface. Imagine this: a small, aging Philippine vessel braves the open sea, carrying supplies to the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting World War II-era warship deliberately grounded and now serving as a makeshift outpost. Suddenly, massive Chinese Coast Guard ships loom on the horizon, their intent clear: to block the Philippine mission and assert their dominance. Tension crackles in the salty air as radio warnings are exchanged, each side demanding the other stand down. The Chinese, through booming loudspeakers, demand the Filipinos turn back, insisting these waters are part of their territory. The Filipinos refuse, standing their ground and insisting they are well within their internationally recognized exclusive economic zone, defending what they believe is rightfully theirs. The distance between the ships narrows, collision seems inevitable, as neither side is willing to yield. Suddenly, a Chinese ship rams the Philippine boat, another unleashes a powerful water cannon, shattering windows and putting the Filipino crew in real danger. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Filipino sailors remain resolute, documenting every moment for the world to witness, hoping international attention will bring accountability. For these sailors, the mission is about more than just supplies. It's about defending national rights, supporting their Marines, and upholding their country's dignity. For China, every action is about enforcing sweeping historical claims, projecting power, and signaling to the world that it will not back down. Each encounter ratchets up the tension, raising the stakes and pushing both sides ever closer to a dangerous and unpredictable line. This is no movie. One miscalculation, one wrong move, could ignite a regional conflict, or even draw in global powers and spark a much larger crisis. The standoff is a microcosm of a much larger struggle: David versus Goliath, law versus power, a small nation standing up to a giant. The Philippines stands firm, determined to supply its outpost, assert its sovereignty, and show the world it will not be intimidated. Meanwhile, China flexes its might, deploying more ships and making it clear it is unwilling to yield its sweeping claims. Every incident becomes a test of resolve, watched closely by the world's media, diplomats, and military strategists. The tension is constant, a low hum of anxiety that never fades, even when the sea appears calm. The world watches, holding its breath, hoping the next headline isn't the one that changes everything forever. In these contested waters, every day is a gamble with peace, and every decision could tip the balance. The stakes are incredibly high, and the margin for error is razor thin. One mistake could have catastrophic consequences. The South China Sea remains a flashpoint, its deceptively calm surface hiding a brewing storm beneath, threatening to erupt at any moment. And so, the standoff continues, unresolved and seemingly endless, with no clear end in sight, each day bringing new risks, and the world watching, waiting, and hoping for peace. At the heart of the conflict is a complex and deeply rooted clash of law, history, and national pride, each fueling the other in a cycle that seems impossible to break. The Philippines relies on modern international law and a landmark 2016 Hague Tribunal ruling that invalidated China's sweeping claims over the South China Sea, a decision celebrated by many as a victory for smaller nations standing up to powerful neighbors. For Filipinos, this dispute is more than just a legal battle. It's about defending sovereignty, protecting their way of life, and asserting a proud national identity that has been shaped by centuries of struggle. China, however, firmly rejects the ruling, pointing to centuries-old historical maps and records to justify its claims, arguing that its ties to these waters run deep in the nation's history. This narrative is deeply embedded in Chinese education and politics, taught in schools and reinforced by leaders as a matter of national destiny. For Beijing, backing down would be seen as a national humiliation, a betrayal of the sacrifices made by generations past. Both sides are driven by powerful waves of nationalism, making compromise nearly impossible as public sentiment demands unwavering resolve. The Philippines' assertive stance is popular at home, widely seen as standing up to a much larger bully and defending the nation's dignity on the world stage. China's leaders, too, face intense domestic pressure to project strength, restore national pride, and never appear weak in the face of foreign challenges. The dispute has become a powerful symbol of resilience and determination for both nations, rallying citizens around a shared cause. Leaders on both sides risk political ruin if they're seen as weak or willing to compromise, making every decision fraught with risk. The issue is no longer just legal or territorial, it's emotional, political, and deeply personal for millions of people. Nationalism fuels the standoff, locking both countries into hardline positions and making dialogue even more difficult. The gap between law and history remains unbridgeable, leaving the South China Sea as a flashpoint where past and present collide, and the future remains uncertain. The South China Sea is a global economic artery, a potential energy goldmine, and a vital food source. 1/3 of global shipping passes through these waters, linking economies from Asia to the world. Any disruption would send shockwaves through supply chains and global markets. Beneath the sea lie vast contested reserves of oil and natural gas, resources both China and the Philippines desperately want. For the Philippines, these resources mean energy security and economic growth. For China, they're a matter of national security and self-sufficiency. The sea is also a lifeline for millions of fishermen. Filipino fishermen now face harassment and dwindling catches as China asserts control. The struggle is about survival, prosperity, and sovereignty. For the world, it's about keeping trade routes open and stable. The stakes are enormous, drawing international attention and concern. The South China Sea's value ensures the conflict won't fade away. Its fate will shape the region's future. The United States looms large over the South China Sea dispute, casting a long shadow that shapes the region's security landscape. While Washington officially claims neutrality on the question of sovereignty, it is unwavering in its insistence on freedom of navigation and open sea lanes for all nations, arguing that these waters are vital for global trade and security. U.S. Navy warships regularly challenge China's sweeping maritime claims by conducting freedom of navigation operations, sailing close to disputed islands to assert international rights. The U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty means that any attack on Philippine vessels could potentially draw in American forces, raising the stakes for all involved. This security guarantee is meant to deter Chinese aggression, but it also increases the risk of a direct military confrontation between the world's two largest powers. From Beijing's perspective, the U.S. is an outside agitator, accused of stirring up trouble and encouraging regional confrontation rather than peace. The visible U.S. presence emboldens Manila to stand up to Beijing's claims, while China responds with a rapid military buildup and increased patrols. Each side's actions only fuel the other's suspicions, creating a dangerous cycle of escalation and mistrust that is difficult to break. The Philippines, feeling vulnerable, relies heavily on U.S. support, while China insists it must defend itself from what it sees as encirclement by hostile forces. The American role, originally intended to stabilize the region, has now become central to the conflict, making the U.S. a key player in every development. What began as a regional dispute over rocks and reefs has now escalated into a global rivalry, drawing in powers from around the world. The risk is clear. A local clash between ships or aircraft could quickly spiral into a superpower confrontation with far-reaching consequences. The triangle of interests, American, Chinese, and Philippine, keeps tensions high and diplomatic solutions frustratingly elusive, as each side clings to its own vision of order. Today, the South China Sea is no longer just a regional flashpoint. It has become a stage for great power competition, where the world watches and waits for the next move. In 2024 and 2025, the standoff turned dangerous. Chinese Coast Guard ships used water cannons and ramming tactics against Philippine vessels, causing injuries and damage. The confrontations escalated. Chinese personnel boarded a Philippine boat, seizing equipment and injuring sailors. These were calculated moves, aggressive but just short of open war. China also used lasers to blind crews and deployed barriers to block fishing grounds. Each incident tested the Philippines' resolve and the U.S. defense commitment. The pattern, forceful enough to intimidate, but not enough to trigger war. With ships operating so close, the risk of a deadly miscalculation is higher than ever. The region teeters on the edge, with every encounter a potential spark. Outgunned, the Philippines fights back with radical transparency. Journalists and cameras now accompany every patrol, capturing China's aggressive actions in real time. These images flood global media, making it hard for Beijing to deny or spin its behavior. The strategy wins international support and strengthens alliances, especially with the US, Japan, and Australia. Manila's approach turns China's actions into evidence for global condemnation. The risk public shaming could provoke harsher Chinese responses. Still, the Philippines has shifted the narrative, giving a small nation a powerful voice. In the information age, controlling the story is as crucial as controlling the sea. To prevent disaster, both sides agreed to a Coast Guard hotline in 2025. The idea real-time communication to avoid accidental collisions and de-escalate tense encounters. It's a crisis management tool, not a solution to the underlying dispute. The hotline's success depends on political will. If either side wants escalation, no phone call will stop it. Critics fear China could use it to legitimize its presence or pressure Filipino crews. The hotline is a bandage, not a cure, for a deep and dangerous wound. A lasting solution is nearly impossible. The Philippines stands on international law, China on historical claims. Compromise means political suicide for leaders on both sides. China's militarization of artificial islands and the Philippines' deepening US alliance fuel distrust. Past, broken promises and strategic ambitions poison diplomacy. Nationalism and domestic politics leave little room for negotiation. The dispute is now a test of national will, not just territory. The puzzle remains unsolved with no end in sight. Calm seas don't mean peace in the South China Sea. Lulls may come, but the conflict simmers beneath the surface. The core issues, sovereignty, resources, power, remain unresolved. True peace would require trust and compromise, both in short supply. Until then, the region will cycle between tension and uneasy quiet. The world must not mistake silence for resolution. In these waters, quiet is just everyone holding their breath.